Okay, it's 5:30 and I know that people will be coming in little by little, but I think that in order to stick to the schedule, it will be good to start now. So hi, first of all, I hope you can hear me okay. If somebody has problems hearing, send a chat message and then ask questions in the Q&A about the actual topic of today. But so welcome everybody who is already online. And first of all, I'd like to give congratulations to you guys because you have been doing wonderful work in the hackathon and a very important work, especially in the, like in these times, the very weird times of Corona. Here we all are in different places of the world, seeing each other's bookshelves and, and so on. But yeah, great job. So congratulations for all of you. And I hope things will proceed nicely for you. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things. So yeah, mute your microphones. Of course, later on, there will be, I want to keep plenty of time for interactions and questions. So we can also see, if somebody has questions, raise the hand or say, but otherwise, when we are talking, so if you are not saying anything, keep the microphone in mute. Also, yeah, ask questions through Q&A if possible. As I said, we'll have plenty of time. I didn't think of going through a lot of slides and just talking myself. The topic is negotiation and networking, so let's also try to network. Finally, there also are, for those who are in Facebook, so apologies, but I can't do digital multitasking. So see, I started my first company when IBM PC came to the market. So those of you who know history can approximately deduce that that was a long time ago. Many of you were probably not even born. And then if I say that when I was studying at the university, I did programming with punch cards or punching cards, so you can really imagine how far ago that was, or how long ago that was. So I allow myself not to do digital multitasking. However, the wonderful Helen, who is here as my technical support, she has said that she will follow questions in the Facebook and also type them in the Q&A. So the questions will come also here. And if there are lots of questions, so we have 1 hour. I will finish at that time, but I'll after that, I can hang along for a little while in the Q&A still and see, if there are things to discuss. And anyways, after this, and you've been already in other sessions, you've been to hackathons, I encourage all of you, of course, to keep talking to each other and to network, because it's going to be very important for you. So with that, just to say, yes, hi, I'm Kaija. I am talking here today, not the expert as such, because I have a strong feeling that we never are experts. We keep on learning all the time. Just a few words about me. So my background is in applied mathematics and physics, and I was absolutely sure that I will become a researcher because my parents had a company, well, entrepreneurs. I wanted to do science, but then when I was studying, I ended up starting the first company and became an entrepreneur way back when. Done different things after that, have been coaching, have been an advisor in boards and in investment boards and so on. Also been coaching for the EU, and that has been very, very interesting. And being in business long enough that I have probably made all the mistakes that's possible to make. And I think that that's important to do things. And yeah, sometimes things go wrong, but you always learn, and you can always then try again and do different things. So even though I think in the program, I had said that, my title advisor, but afterwards I realized I really don't like the title advisor. I prefer to call myself either a catalyst or sounding board, because that's what I like to do. I'm really curious, and I ask a lot of questions. So you'll see soon when we go to the presentation. But so that's the background. I'm here in Helsinki, and like I said, nice to talk to you all, and hopefully we'll get this interactive. I do have some slides in the beginning to give you some food for thought. So the topic today, negotiations, networking, and expanding your network. In the digital era, we do network. But I wanted to start with this picture, which is, to me, it does crystallize what, to me, negotiations and also networking is really about, and that's about balance. So it's a balance between the people who engage in networking and engage in negotiations. And it is about establishing a dialogue. So it is give and get. If it is one-sided, to me, it's not negotiation, that's dictation. And that seldom leads to anything really nice, at least on the long term. For a short term, yeah, maybe somebody gains, but very short term. So when I talk about negotiations and when I coach companies on negotiations and networking, and I coach a lot of startups when they are like, so how do we get started? Where do we get our customers from? And we are a small startup. And then when we go and meet big customers, they just sort of tell us that, oh, we'll give our terms to you. And that's it. And yeah, that's reality. But when we start thinking about negotiations, I always say that, okay, Casablanca said it, the fundamental things apply. Networking and negotiation is done by people and between people. So it is about people. And there are loads of guides on how to do really good negotiations and how to negotiate yourself a better salary or how to win in negotiations and so on. They have good ideas there. You know, there are instructions on how to use LinkedIn efficiently for networking. And we can talk about that later when we get to the questions and answers. And they're really good tools. But still, I think that before you go and start thinking about the tools, it's good sometimes to go back and think, so, you know, what are the fundamental things? And because this is about people. So to me, it's also like always start with, yes, okay, what do I want? What is my goal? But it's just as important to stop for a moment and say, hold on. Well, if I put myself in the position of my counterpart, and I'm not saying opponent, I'm saying counterpart. So what would that person think? And you can, when you do that exercise, I think that you start realizing, okay, you know, things that you see, the other person can see quite differently. And when you practice that a bit, it's not about finding the right answers, but just getting to the feeling of, okay, well, let's look at it from the other side. And that, I think, is important when you go to negotiations and also when you network. So the basic guidance, this actually is in every religion, the same sentence in different ways, and every philosopher says this. And it is behave towards others as you would like them to behave towards you. So I very often see like guides of how do I get more from negotiations, or how do I win in networking. But I do think that the difference is that if you think of how can I benefit from knowing you in networking versus you go and say to the person, well, how are you? To me, that's the fundamental difference. And you know, it's good to say, hey, you know, I would really like to be in touch with you, and could you do these things for me? But if that's the only thing that you keep on saying, at some point you will see that people are like, okay, right, they will not be that interested in continuing that with you. And sometimes I notice it that, of course, you are excited and you want to network and you want to expand your network. But I really think that, again, put yourself in the position of the other person. How would you feel about being contacted and said, hey, can you do things for me? It's nice to help others, but you can't do it forever. And even though the other person, you know, would say, yeah, I'm happy to help, there is a limit at some point when that person feels like, well, you know, now I can't do more for you. So always remember that. And so win-win, the famous words. Many times we talk about win-win and we say, well, does it really mean anything that much? But I do think, personally, I think that yes, it does. And this is the principle also for me on the yin-yang. You can build a win-win and you should do it in a yin and yang way. So there is a balance between adapt and push. Yes, it's important to learn to listen, to empathize, to understand. And many times when I coach people on, when you do sales, or when I say, well, what should your website look like? I always say, well, your website should be more about your customers and actually less about you. How you solve the problems of your customers, how when you work together with your partners, how can you understand them and listen to them? How when you network, you will go and say, hey, what are you doing and what are the things you do? And then you can say, oh, that's interesting. But that doesn't mean that you only listen. Of course, you also need to push. You need to create the new needs and you need to come up with ideas. And it's very much the balance of inspiring, giving new ideas, saying, hey, I have this thought. Because if you only listen and if you only ask, you are not actually negotiating and you are not networking either. So it is the two sides always. And it's important to keep it in mind. Okay, I said that my background is in applied math. So yeah, I love game theory. And I love thinking about, especially in negotiations, when I go with startups to negotiating with companies. And yeah, it's, you go there and you think like the company says, oh, we want to have everything at a very low price. And of course, you can say it's like chess or it is like a game. That's their opening move. But you can't produce that, of course. So first think like, okay, what game is this? Is this a zero-sum game? And in many cultures, for example, and in many guides, negotiations tend to be seen as zero sums. Somebody wins, and if somebody wins, another person loses. And that's where I personally think that the goal should be to build a win-win. So try to move away from the zero-sum game to, okay, how do we both win? And again, I know that it's said many times and you're like, well, it sounds simple, but it really is thinking of the mindset and thinking of, okay, if I go to the negotiation feeling out, this is what I want and I need to get it. And if I don't get it, I've lost. So to me, you will most likely lose. Because the other side in the negotiation needs to get something too and needs to have the feeling of, well, I won something. So you need to think of alternatives and you need to think like, how do I understand what those alternatives could be? How can I come up beforehand when I prepare some ideas for alternatives? Some things that, if I say, oh, I would like to sell this and I would need 10,000 euros for that. So then the other side says, well, no. If you then don't have an alternative, or if you then don't continue like, well, why, or what else could we do? The negotiations ends there. And the worst negotiation is like the other one says, yes, I need this. And the other one said, no, you can't get it. And then, we'll get back to when it's time to leave the negotiation. But so really thinking of win-win, what are the alternatives? And then I come to my absolute favorite thing, which is ask why 5 times. So again, I'm also a systems analyst. And when we look at the systems, we always think of how do they behave and what is the root cause for that behavior. So ask why 5 times. Actually, the person who came up with that idea is Sakichi Toyoda, who was the founder of Toyota. And if any of you know Lean, there is the Toyota way, which is again, I always say there are no absolute truths, but there are really good things about it. And I remember when I've been doing maths, but then I've used this a lot in business. And when I negotiate, and this is just an example, and by the way, there are the links to these sites. So these are not my writings, but I love to read what others are writing. So, here's a good example of, this is a sales situation, but sales is also negotiating. So the sales guy says, I saw you were on our CRM page. Why the interest? The prospect says, we are just always looking at different products, thought it might be cool. And then the rep, who is really sort of fine. Now I want to go to negotiate, says, yeah, great. Well, let me tell you all about our product. The alternative is on the other side. And the rep keeps on asking why. Again, of course, you can't just go on insisting, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? You need to play by the ear. But many times in a negotiation, when we want to, especially when it is a sales negotiation, we want to sell and we are excited and we think that we know that what we have is the best things in sliced bread. But we need to listen first and we need to ask from the customer, well, even if our solution is the best things in sliced bread, is it something that the customer actually wants, and what does the customer really want? So I always say deceptively simple rule, but do practice, if you haven't done it before, practice asking why, if not 5 times, at least a couple of times, because you will find things out. Sometimes people say to me, well, in negotiations, the other side doesn't want to tell anything. Sometimes that may happen. But I have to say that my experience is that once you ask and you show that you're curious, you actually get a lot of information from them, which is important information. And then one thing I do want to emphasize, and one of the learnings over the years and over all the depressions and so on, which I have already lived through. I'm 60 years old, so I've really, this Corona crisis is my 5th really bad sort of crisis situation. This may turn out to be the worst, but when you are in negotiations, and first you need to get there, and that's the first hurdle, and that is about networking, and we'll come back to that very quickly with the questions. But then also after you've negotiated and you think that you've agreed, and this is one of my favorite pictures, that you sit there and everybody's like, I'm so glad that we agreed. And unless you write a written summary or unless you confirm, so did we agree on this thing, you will very often be surprised that you are absolutely sure that we agreed, and the other person is absolutely sure also that you agreed, but about something else. And there are things like, oh, we need this on Friday. Is it Friday morning or end of business on Friday, or is it actually, by Monday morning? And you need, when you negotiate, just make sure that the key things that you have understood them the same way, because otherwise you may end up with really disappointed people. The worst thing after a negotiation is that you've had a negotiation and everybody is like, yeah, we have agreed, but you are in this situation actually because you haven't confirmed it. And then when people feel that we agreed, but then they feel like, okay, now I didn't get what we agreed on just because there was a misunderstanding, that is when people get really disappointed too. And sometimes the reaction feels like, totally out of proportion. But it is because there is this emotion of, we agreed, I was sure we agreed, now the other guy or the other person didn't do what we agreed. Hey, what happened? I mean, I'm disappointed. I feel a bit betrayed. If I have my job on the line in the company where I am working, how am I going to go and say, ooh, I thought we agreed on this, but now the others are saying, oh, no, we didn't agree. And from my experience, I can say, having been in boards of directors and so on, I've seen enough of messes which come from these situations after something that people thought this was good negotiation. Very, as I said, a simple way to at least make it better is during the negotiation, ask, okay, so we agreed on this. And then after the negotiation, send a short written summary. And that will clarify a lot of things. And then my last presentation slide, if you will. So, very nice song. You've got to know when to hold them and when to fold them, know when to walk away, and yeah, sometimes when to run. Hopefully you don't have to do much running. But yeah, one of the things when I coach, especially early stage startups, with practically everyone we go through, they're saying like, we can't say no to any customers, or we can't say no in negotiations because we are small and we have to get the business. And I know I've been in the same situation many times. And I know that it's true. And you should never, my feeling is, of course, you never walk away immediately and you try to understand. But then there are negotiations which just are not either going anywhere or which are just, instead of converging, they are diverging. And so then I always say that, okay, I know how hard, sorry is the hardest word with Elton John, but saying no to customer, I think sometimes is even harder. So what I always say that try thinking of it this way. Okay, if you are a small startup or so on, and you say, well, we have to get this customer and things are really difficult, then ask yourself, so what would happen if we would politely say, look, we are sorry, we can't really help you. And then all that time which you are now spending in negotiations, which are not going anywhere, you actually would be spending with somebody with whom the negotiations actually go somewhere. So not only are you spending time with someone who's not going to go further, you are losing the time that you could spend with somebody or with a company with whom things would go much faster. So it is your alternative cost. And think about that. And then I feel that you start feeling that, yeah, actually it makes more sense. Now, having said that, as I said, you never walk away quickly. And so, but the other thing you should do, and okay, again, maths, yes, I also did physics. So you get what you measure. And if you don't measure, you don't really know what you are getting. So do set milestones, KPIs, key performance indicators. And I don't mean to say that do 72 of them, no. But when you start negotiating, set yourself a timeline. Say like, okay, so if these one or two things have not happened in 2 weeks or 1 month, depending on the other side's time cycle and so on, say, okay, so what shall I do? Because if you just let things go further and further, believe me from experience, things very seldom, I mean, you can have a bad start and then quickly things change. But I've very seldom seen cases where after even an okay start, but things start getting slow and difficult and so on. Very seldom do they suddenly change better, or even in a longer time. If you have asked why, if you have tried to understand what the needs are, if you have offered ideas, alternatives, and said like, well, this is what we could do. And if it's still like, no. Very often when in negotiations, the other party says no to you, I always say, well, it's not a no. It's just a more interesting path to yes, and a longer path. But yeah, in truth, sometimes you just don't get to the yes. And you have to decide what is your limit. And as I said, you can always politely say, sorry, we don't seem to be getting anywhere here, or we think that we can't meet your demands. But if later on you think that we can be of assistance and we can help you, please get in touch. And then you release yourselves time to find those companies, partners, organizations for which you can offer things and for which your value proposal is a good fit. So, yep, sometimes you just need to say no. So basically, that's it from the food for thought slides that I had. Also, by the way, now when I remember, so I have given the PDF of these slides. If you want to, you can get them from the organizers and so on. They will divide them or sort of put them available. These are general, but as I said, I prefer to give food for thought. But now, actually, it's my time to ask questions from you guys. And I'm not saying that you need to give answers immediately, but what I would like to hear from you in the Q&A, or then, there are not that many of us at the moment, so we can even have ask questions through the microphone if you have them. So these are also questions for you to think, and also kind of not homework, but things like when I say, okay, for negotiations, and then we can talk separately about networking. So homework 1, and now we come to my favorite. So ask why 5 times. When you think, well, what is your goal? So you can, as an example, you can say, I need to get 10,000 from the company I'm talking to or the organization in order to develop things. And that's why I say that first know thyself and do the exercise of, well, why do you need the 10,000? And then you answer to that. And then you say, well, okay, so why do you need to do that? And then you go, why do you need to do that, what you answered? And actually, when you focus on it, you may realize that you come up with, well, if I don't get, actually, do I need the 10,000 immediately? And what would the alternatives be to the 10,000? So that you can have alternatives then when you go and talk with the people there. Okay, actually there is a general question from somebody. So what I will do is, if it's okay, I can just quickly read this. Now you have to excuse me, but I haven't been using Zoom, so I'm not sure whether you all see the Q&A, I understand. So since starting your project in early April, you've found networking quite overwhelming. Aha, yes, it is. It is really overwhelming. You should see my emails. Oh God, I have said that one day when I retire, I'm going to clean up my emails. Okay, so organizing contacts and how to manage networking while having a full-time job. Now, first of all, there's no one right answer, and we are very different. My experience, when networking started and it was possible to network, it was like, hey, I have 2,000 contacts in LinkedIn, or 200. And very soon you realize, okay, quality versus quantity is important. I also, I was actually years ago when I was doing sort of these coachings for people who were in high positions in industry and didn't know anything about digital. And we were talking about this. And I said always to them that, well, first of all, you need to decide, like, okay, I would again ask why. Why is it important? Why would it be important for you to have like loads of contacts? If you can come up with a good root cause for that, then I would say, okay, then you have to prioritize and you have to start thinking, how will you organize a little bit more time? Another thing is be organized. So what I see a lot is that, okay, people say, yep, I am, just doing something little. And then 2 hours later, they are still doing that something little. So I think it's a good idea to kind of say, for networking, you take 15 minutes, half an hour on certain days when you really do it sort of intensively. And then as I said, think about, well, what is important for you. I won't say like, well, who are the important people, who are beneficial, but think also like, again, ask why. So what kind of networking is important for you at the moment? I see there's a raised hand, and I see your question. So Shrey, do you want to answer? Well, do you want to ask the question? Because you said how to know when to cash out an acquaintance contact relation. My honest opinion, don't cash out people. Let's talk a little bit about that. So okay, where at one time I was doing some angel investing and so on, and yeah, I got these questions of, can you introduce me to that person, and can you get us a meeting with a fund and so. And quite honestly, you start saying, well, no, because if it's somebody you know, and if it's somebody that you feel like confident about, yes, I know enough of this that I can make the introduction. Introductions are also things that you don't want to do lightly, because if you do them lightly, they lose their value completely. And if you mean with cash out, now I want to ask, do I understand this correctly? Cash out an acquaintance contact relation, do you mean that you want to get an investment, or you just want to kind of profit from the fact that they have connections? Because if you talk about investment, that's one thing I always say, that friends, family, fools are the first investors, but they may become ex-friends, so make sure that you treat them well. But also going back to, it's give and get. And if you feel, again, try thinking, if you would be in the position of that person, would you really think that the short-term gain versus the long-term gain, and is it even ending up in a short-term gain? So sorry, I'm pretty philosophical about this, but my advice would be like, think twice before you would this. Yeah, exactly. You may lose the relation after the ask is done. Yeah, and then think, is it worth it? Again, if you have a good network, you don't lose the relations. If you ask it, then okay, for example, using LinkedIn. Again, I've been asked many times about how can I use the LinkedIn. As it should, LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. I think it's really great, and for especially startups and people, is the greatest thing. But there are ways how you approach it. And going back to the slide which has the yin yang, so you both listen and you push, and then you always remember to ask, hey, how could I help you? It is, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, but it's this question of, it needs to be balanced. And that's why I would say, don't cash. Why would you cash out? Because then you are not thinking, you are thinking like, I get something, and then you may lose the relationship. Don't know if that answers. If anybody else has comments on this and experiences, please participate. Like I said, I don't have answers. I just have some experiences which in some situations work and in some they don't. Okay, good, thanks. I'm glad that if it makes sense. Victor had a question about, you are a large group designing a ventilator formula for free distribution to governments around the world. So should we worry about lack of perceived value due to the fact that it's free? Very good question. I think that two things. For a while, we were taught that everything should be, like lots of things should be free. And of course, they are not free. Now, I think that my advice is always, you need to frame this thing. That if you give it for free, you need to really say, well, what is the value? And eventually, I would then also ask, like, how long can you go on doing this for free? At some point, I would imagine that, somebody needs to pay you some salary or something because people do need to live on something. If you have funding, if you know there's a charity or so on, I don't know if you have funding, but at some point, there is this question. Okay, so here's one thing that I do sometimes when, not that much now because I do it less, but when I was doing more of coaching and consulting and so on, and I got this like, hey, could you do like a market study or a benchmarking and so on for me free of charge? Could you write me an 30-page application free of charge? And so my answer was then always that, well, you know what, if you want to have my work free, obviously my work has no value, because if it's free, it's valueless. And then my question is, why would you want to have something which has no value? I understand you, and I think that you are in a different situation, and I think you are doing a great thing, and the ventilator will help people, but you would need to really make that value tangible, so that people understand that there's work behind the ventilator. And at some point, somebody needs to pay for the make of the ventilators. You can't get the components free, and you can't get your work free. And then you just need to kind of say, okay, this is the value, and then you come up with alternatives. I work with companies which do things free for charity, but then they have like either a charity organization, or they even have like individuals funding them and saying, look, I want to do this so that people will, let's say, get the ventilators, and it's really important. But at some point, somebody needs to fund the components and some of your time. There's a difference between making tons of money because people are suffering. That's not a good idea. But at the same time, no one should expect that you are and other people are giving their time endlessly for free. The other thing is, unfortunately, most voluntary organizations always come to an end, because if there is nothing that comes out of it, people stop. You need to get something out of it, and that is where I would really frame it. So I think we have okay, here's Svarag. Sorry. If you are in a business relationship with another group and that group stops responding to emails, oh yeah, that happens. Yeah, what's the best way to get them back on the project? So I actually think that asking them, again, have you given up on this project? I think it is a good idea. And then you will ask, well, why? And again, coming back to, instead of saying, have you given up on this project? And then they would say, yeah. And you will say, well, what could we do for you? Instead, you would say like, okay, so why? Like, what are the reasons? And then if they say, well, we don't really have time or so on. And then you could kind of say, well, are there things that we could do to make it easier for you, or make it possible for you to come back to the project? So yes, you need to put the cat on the table and ask it. But then instead of kind of letting them just say, well, we don't have the time, I always say, like I said, getting a no is just a more interesting and longer way to yes. You don't get to yes always, but kind of say, again, coming back to you adapt and listen, but then you need also to push and say, well, what would help? There's a very interesting, not a trick, this is actually something that, again, in Lean, this works very well. If you ask, well, what should we do so that you would come into the project? So you'll get, all kinds of ideas. The problem is that sometimes you get ideas that actually for the other party are nice to have, but they are not really their must-haves. If you formulate the question differently and you say, well, what prevents you? What stops you from continuing this project? Actually, our mind starts thinking differently. So, and that is a way that you get faster to the root cause. I've done this exercise like I don't know how many times, and I do it with boards and so on. And it's interesting when people are like, oh, right, I started thinking differently when I was asked, well, what prevents you from doing something? What stops you from doing something? Instead of saying, oh, what would you like? So you get faster there. So I hope that gives you some ideas. how do you deal with people who don't respond, even though they expressed interest initially? Okay, so what I said before, of course, you go back and you say, hey, is there something, we can do? Would love to hear back from you, and so on. Again, I have been in the situation so many times, and I think that there is, again, now we come back to, well, when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away. And the fact is that, again, two things. Think about yourself in the same situation. You have telephone company who keeps calling you and saying, we have a great plan, why don't you change? When do you start feeling like, oh, can't you understand? Can't you understand that I'm saying no? Don't call me, we call you. And the other thing is also like, I would say that that's the KPI for you. In some cases, you may say, listen, I've sent 3 emails and with different ways. One with like, hey, can we get you back into will you get back into the project? We'd love to hear your feedback. And or you can say, well, we've seen that you are maybe not interested, but we'd love to hear why. And then like, hey, we have this new thing that we actually now could offer. And if there's still no response, after 3 or 4 times, again, I would say spend that time with people who respond, and you are using your time better. I know that then a lot of times I talk, I coach startups who say, yeah, we've sent 100 emails and we got no replies. And then in that situation, I also say, like, okay, back to the drawing board. First, you need to ask, did you send the mail to the right people? Have you asked why? Have you thought that, well, I think that this is great value, but do I really understand what is valuable for these people I have sent this mail to? And then also, like, well, what was the mail like? Did they understand? I see a lot of mails where the sender, who understands perfectly what their solution is about, uses words and abbreviations and so on, or just explains the thing in a way that it's sort of I don't understand what you are doing. And this is the thing where you need to do this kind of a testing. And if you are sending emails to a lot of people, do the A/B testing. Send one type of a mail, or well, not mail, but type of contact. Nowadays, people don't read mails. One type of a message to one group and another type of a message to another group. And you don't have to have like thousands of people to get some indication of what works and what doesn't. But yeah, at some point, you just kind of you need to understand they are not replying. Who should we contact? Lessons learned. Analyze. Like, hey, I'm a data scientist. I love data. I love patterns, and I always start saying, if I have 2 data points, I can already start thinking, is there a pattern? Okay, so how should we deal with people behind the table? Influences to your counterpart that you cannot control. We don't have those people to talk to, and sometimes we don't even know that they exist. And in one day to the next, the person you are negotiating with changes their mind and stops the negotiation because of someone behind the table. Okay, how do you stop that? Now I want to check first, do I understand you correctly? Someone behind the table is like, there's somebody, okay, 2 ways. Either the person you are talking with has a hidden agenda, or then that person doesn't have the authority to do the negotiations. There's somebody telling, like, no, somebody else is making the decision. Is that what you mean with this? Because and actually, let me do one thing. I showed you what's your goal. And then the next one is, well, try thinking, well, what is the goal of the other person? And again, ask why. Put yourself in the position of that person. First, practice it when you prepare. And then when you are in the negotiation, try asking why 5 times. Now, as is said, in one day to the next, the person you are negotiating changes their mind and stops because of someone behind the table. How can you ask without being rude? Again, try, instead of kind of saying, well, why did you change your mind? Try again, like not saying, well, why did you change your mind? Like, okay, so why do you think that our solution doesn't meet your needs at the moment? And then instead of sort of putting the person in a bit of a difficult situation, if they don't want to say that, well, my boss actually told me I can't talk with you, you give a way for that person to reply to you and give some information if they want to do that. And as I said, instead of asking directly, in this case, I would go the indirect way and not saying like, well, is your boss telling you not to do? Just kind of saying, okay, so, can you tell us why you feel our solution doesn't meet the needs? Has something changed in your needs and so on? Because going back to this, business is done by people between people. So in some cultures like Japan, losing face is absolutely terrible. I'm from Finland. I'm a Finnish engineer. Finnish engineers don't talk. We think and we want to come up with the answer, and we hate asking questions. But we tend to be very impersonal and very much like Japanese and so on. And in other cultures, you can go more to sort of a direct questions. I would say, and this is from my experience, if you have been building a good rapport with the person by giving to that person things that they are interested in, so that's a good thing. Okay, so one very important thing to remember always in negotiations, your job is also to make your counterpart shine in the eyes of their bosses. And I always say, look, that's why it's so important to understand like what is important for them. But we tend to focus on what is our value proposal to your organization. Come on, let's face it, we are all people. You also need to think that that person on the other side of the table has a job, wants to do his or her job well. If you ask in not direct, like, well, how can actually sometimes I have asked even directly, okay, tell me, is there something I can do to make your job easier, to take this further? And in several cases I actually got like the answer, well, actually, now when you asked, could you change the pricing so that we could divide it in two parts so I can get it through easier? Or could you provide this kind, I need to do a presentation. And I said, fine, can I send you a couple of slides which, describe this? Oh, wow, that would be great. It doesn't work always, but try to think, how can you help that person in their job? And then you don't have to ask directly, like, okay, so what happened? And, you were untrustworthy. Okay, so two things. Sometimes people have hidden agendas, and countless times I've realized that, oh damn, I negotiated with the wrong person, and the only thing that the person was trying to do was to either cheat me or like sort of be the I win everything and you lose. And that happens also. But many times, again, I would say that most of the times people want to do their job well. They want to be able to show inside their organization, hey, they came up with a good solution and so on. And that's why when you ask, like, well, is there something that we could do to take this further? And then if the answer is like, no, not really, then it may well be that somebody higher up has said, no, we are not buying from them. And then again, you don't lose two things. You don't lose time with them anymore. And also you don't end up with a sour note. You are not getting like, well, why did you do this? And, oh, why is your boss doing this? It's just sort of, okay, fine. And then you can go away. And maybe, what one thing is, that one person may change jobs. And in that new job, that one person may come up and call you again and say, hi, now I'd like to continue with you. So again, every no is also a possible opportunity. Not always, but it's there. I wanted to show one question for you. So what are your moving? Because I mean, I can't do a presentation about negotiations without Dilbert, but this is the thing that always, you know, my advice is prepare for the negotiation. And I always ask from companies, so okay, so what are the moving parts? What can we put on the table? And then when we negotiate, what parts are such that we can say, okay, this we can give to the other party, but then these are the things that we can't give to them. Also, the other part of this in negotiations is you try to find out how much money is on the table, if we talk about money, or how much commitment is on the table, because obviously the other side of the table doesn't come in immediately and say, I have a 50,000 budget and, you know, I could give it to you. No, they don't. They want to, they have other things that they want to buy, and they need to buy. And remember, if they can save in the budget that they have, that's a good thing for them. So you need to try and find out how much there is on the table, but at the same time think, where can you yield? What can you give? And there I also always say that when you go to a negotiation, if you, for example, say, I need 10,000, and if that's your opening gambit, so then it becomes a question of yes or no, you get it or not. Frame it differently. What else is there that would be useful for you? Can you get, you know, equipment? Can you get testing? Can you get a reference? Whatever. Think of all those things that would be valuable for you. Do you need the 10,000, or can you actually, could you manage with a little bit less? And then that's fine. But do this beforehand, prepare for that. Okay, we have our next question. Sorry, I didn't notice it early. How can we approach an expert, for example, a professor, and ask for some feedback? Yeah, it's difficult to ask for free feedback when we don't know if we will be able to count with him in the future. Okay, yeah, I know a lot of professors who say like, yeah, you know, they get a lot of requests. And again, here we come to the point that much depends on how you ask. If you say, hey, could you give us feedback? You are just in the long list of wanting to get time from the professor. So I always say, frame it so that, and not just, you know, frame it artificially, but first think. So what could be the things that you could give to the professor? If he does research on an area where what you do, you could bring something in. So say, hey, we are doing this research and we thought that this might interest you, and then at the same time, you know, we would really be happy about the feedback. I give you an example, an analogy. At one time when I was you know, more in boards of companies, so I sometimes, you know, got these like, or especially as when I did a little bit of angel investing, so it was like, hi, we have a company and we are looking for investors, and, you know, would you like to invest in us? Even worse, oh, we need board, you know, members of the board, because somebody had said you need to have a board. Would you be a board member? Free of charge, of course. And then I always said to them, and it's not because I'm saying, oh, I'm so important, but then I always said, so why do you want me as a board of director? What value do you think I bring in there? If you just say we need 5, you know, members of the board, well, again, we come back to, well, you know, right, but does it matter really? Like, you know, then you can get anybody, walk to the street and, you know, take the first 5 that you meet. You must understand why, what you think that the person can bring in there. And then it becomes a discussion. So when you go to the professor also, like, again, give and take, think about that. Sandra is asking, how can you find how much is on the table? The famous question. And okay, again, there is no one way that works in every situation. First of all, of course, do some background work. Kind of try to find out, see what they have been doing before. See if you know somebody in the company, and this is not espionage, but sometimes, you know, if you have a connection to someone, you can find out sort of, well, you know, what is the situation and so on. But again, I think personally that the best way is to use the ask why 5 times. No, you don't go and say, immediately, well, what's your budget? Although at some point, very often, I have been in situations where I ask first some things, and then they say, yeah, well, they say, well, this is what we want. And then I say, okay, so why do you want that? And then they say, yeah, because of this and this. And I said, okay, but what if we would be able to do you this kind of a thing? And then after, when you have gotten into this, well, what is important for you? Actually, I've noticed that then after a little while, you can actually ask, well, what is your budget? What would your budget be for that? And they will answer much more than if you go directly to that. Or if you say, well, this costs 10,000, and they say, no, no, too much, or so on. And then you start kind of haggling about the price. Of course, there's this we need 20% price reduction. And okay, what if we say 10? Price is one variable. But in addition to price, there are so many other variables. What kind of support you bring? What kind of other additional things you could bring to them? Could you bring in, new partners, new references, new kind of users? Sometimes companies are really interested in saying, we don't reach these kind of people. And you can say, well, I actually have. Here we come to networks are valuable too. And going back to what Jose said, if you are talking to a professor, always think that professors are looking, they are looking for money to fund their research, but they are also looking for data, for interesting contacts and so on. So they're also looking for people to study, to work in their research groups and so on. There are so many things, so many moving parts that are there. So think about these things. And like I said, when I frame these last ones, these are sort of, I'm saying, practice these things. I wanted to show, because I realized that now it's almost an hour has gone. Homework 4, or think this: describe a win-win for yourself and for your customer and partner. And this is also something that we, sometimes when I coach companies, we do this just as an exercise, because it's, sometimes when you just sort of write things down or draw them on the whiteboard and so on, it makes you concentrate on, well, what would it be the win-win? And then when you describe it, then you do the, well, why? Why do we think that is a win-win? Because then that also helps you to come up with questions that you can ask in the negotiating part. Or if you are networking, also think well, what would be a win-win for a network? When going back to when do you want to cash out? Instead of cashing out, think if instead of just asking for a favor or asking them to do something, think immediately okay, well, what could I bring into the table? How could I build a win-win? And what would it look like? And do this mental exercise. And then you can come up with questions. And then you are also more tuned in when you have the meeting, whether it's live or, online or so. And then my last thing is that, please do also this, that, well, when will you walk away? When is it time to walk away? What are those things for you? Because, as I said, there's a book called Control Your Destiny or Somebody Else Will. And but Jack Welch ghostwritten and so on. I don't agree with everything that Jack Welch said, far from it, but some things he could crystallize, or somebody could crystallize well. And I think that this is also important in the negotiations, when I've said that, the whole point, what I'd like to finish this with is that, control your destiny or somebody else will. Going back to, you may feel that you are the small guy and you can't say no, but actually you can. There has to be a limit, because if you end up not in a dialogue, but in a total dictation from the other side, believe you me, it won't be nice and it won't get better. So at some point, if things start going too much to that direction, you have the right to say, hey, listen, okay, we have something valuable, and there are people very likely somewhere who see the value. I know that sometimes it's difficult to find them. It really is difficult to find them. And then there is a moment of truth. If you have contacted different types of people and nobody sees the value, maybe, just maybe, your idea isn't that valuable. I'm an expert in this. I come up with so many ideas which I think are absolutely great, but the others don't see the point, and I am disappointed, but then I continue. So yeah, you need to think at some point, of course you test it. And before I answer the last question here, what I see happening often is that people are saying, we have talked to so many people. Actually, they've talked to 50 people, but in reality, they have talked to one person, because those 50 people have been totally alike. They have been representatives of the people that, you think that these are the people we need to talk to. I was coaching not that long ago a company who had been doing great work, but they were saying like, okay, we're not getting sales. And then we sat down and we went through, well, what prevents you from selling? And then we asked why 5 times. And after a while, and it wasn't me, I mean, I only come with questions, but they started thinking about it, and suddenly they realized they have been talking to a completely wrong sector about a completely wrong function of their product. They had a function that was really, really good, but they hadn't talked about it. And it was really, really good to different people and different kinds of companies. And this happens very easily. We get to the tunnel vision. We think somebody says to us, oh, that looks interesting. And we think that's the false positive. We go after it. And we talk to a lot of people, but we don't realize that we are actually talking to very similar people. Let's take this as the last question here. When we approach potential advisors, what compensation should we offer? Thank you for asking that question. Not that I would be an advisor, but okay, so what happens is that I've talked with people who have said, oh, I have heard that advisors have to work for free, otherwise they are not real advisors. And I said, well, okay, we come back to my point. If you want my time and opinions totally for free, then basically they are valueless. So I would say, go and talk to some people who you think that are valuable. What compensation should we offer? Now, I don't mean that, advisors should immediately be paid. And many advisors don't even expect to be paid at all. First thing is that show that you value their time. Say thank you. Say that, hey, that was really nice, because we want to everybody wants to feel that if you contribute, if you do voluntary work, you do want to get some good feeling from that. And if nobody seems to care and so on, you stop that voluntary work pretty quickly. So first of all, it's the showing that you value the advice. And then when you go to them, like I said, also tell them that why you would want them as advisors, like, what are the things that you think that they could contribute. And I don't mean, being flattering and so on, but at least show that you have looked at their background. At sometimes I got calls like, could you be a board member? And I said, okay, so, for what reason? And there's, we need a board member. And I said, have you looked at all, like kind of things that I've done? Not because it's important, but it turned out that they had no clue. They actually thought that I had done totally different things than what I had done. So that's the first thing. Then the compensation. Typically, I would say that do such on the other hand, I'm not saying give them 10% of the company or give them something. No, you don't want to give it immediately, especially if you are talking about, share in a company. That's valuable and you need to treat it as valuable. But build in a system where, depending on how much they work, allow them to do something smaller first, like a smaller amount. And then if it seems that, things go well and the advisor is willing to spend more time, come with an idea. Like you can also say like, hey, it's really been great that you've had this time. And, we have thought that, would it be possible that you would be doing a bit more? And then you say, we have thought a kind of compensation. Typically, it is based on the time they spend some time, but also it's not an hourly thing, because if they have a great network and if they can open up doors for you, 1 5-minute call can be very valuable. So basically, the compensations are show that you value them. You can then say, okay, you can take them to dinners and so on. Many times, if you have something which is like difficult to get to, and this is something that companies who have something really important, they get a lot of people contribute their time, not for free, but for the occasion of being able to do something that isn't like invite only thing. And this is really important, you know. It's not like being VIP, it's just getting an experience that you couldn't otherwise have. So invite them to events, maybe, and ask if they would be interested to come. And start with that. Don't immediately go to monetary compensation. Then at the same time, if the advisor says, look, hey, I'm interested, but you know, this would be my price. And if it's too high for you, again say, okay, you know, you appreciate it at the moment, you know, you can't afford that, but could there be a way where they could do a little bit less? Also find out what is the easy way for them. Swarag, I saw that you raised that. What is the easiest way for them to participate? Because very often what I see is like the companies say, oh, you know, we will have these meetings in Hangouts, or we will have this. And so, and they don't even check whether the people have the tools and so on. Okay, Swarag, you raised your hand. I confess. What do I do when you raise your hand? Do you want to put your mic on? Because I don't see a question here. Okay. Swarag, let me know if you have a question. And then this was how EU versus virus make you agree to give an hour webinar? For me, I mean, I think that the virus is like, it's incredible what has happened. And like I said, hey, you guys have done the hackathon, you have volunteered. And I think that this is the least I can do. And if this has given you any ideas, I'm really happy about that. I'm not saying that I would be doing like hours and hours of this, but 1 hour of my time. And I really enjoyed the questions and so on. And I love it. I've been talking, so I much prefer having a dialogue. But in this situation, still, it's really nice to get the questions. So, you know, time to wrap up. Sorry, we went a little bit over time, but really enjoyed this. I hope you got some ideas from here. And what I want to tell to you is have really great networking and negotiations. It's always fun. Thank you so much. Bye.